Hello, everybody. Chris Lee, Alfred Ezman, and Graham Doty of Southeastern 16. That's right. We have flipped the switch. We are now Southeastern 16. This is the first episode of SEC Baseball Weekly as Southeastern 16. Alfred, Graham, big show ahead today. We got MLB Draft staring us in the face in about a week. We've got portal stuff. And by the way, just as a note, we're recording this on Saturday morning, July the 6th. I'm taking a vacation, so if things are out of the date by the time this airs, which I think will be Wednesday, that explains it. But Graham, lots of stuff going on as we hit the heat of the summer and no shortage of baseball storylines.
No doubt the transfer portal has closed July the 2nd, so everybody's been keeping an eye on the transfer portal. And then, a thing called the Major League Baseball Draft right around the corner, which impacts all these teams as well. So a lot going on, a lot of fun things to talk about for sure.
Alfred, you've seen our draft list of names that are SEC commitments, SEC players. It's almost too much to handle.
It's very, very, very dense. We could, both of the stuff we're talking about today, the draft and the portal, we could probably do separate 2-hour shows on each of them based on how much stuff we have to talk about. But you go down, you could pretty much list every single SEC player in this draft, it seems like, with who you have. And then when it comes to the portal too, you have, it seems like hundreds of people moving around and leaving and coming in, but we're going to do the best we can cramming it in.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about. We will cover, I say most of the significant stuff. You would hope we would. There's just so much of it. And you never know when an MLB organization or a player is going to throw you a curveball. But hey, when it's all over with, we will do that on the SEC Baseball Weekly. We'll talk about who was taken and when. We'll follow the signings into the summer and get into whatever else pops up on the radar. We've got some tournament fields already set for next year. We'll get into a couple of those at the end of the show. But before we get started, a reminder, we are brought to you by BetOnline, your number one source for all your sports betting needs this summer, from baseball, golf, soccer, right to the top fights in UFC, MMA, and boxing. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game is over, head on to our online casino. Get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of over 150 slots games. Head to the website today. Get in on all the action. Use promo code BELIEVE for your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. Bet online. The game starts here. Reminder, always looking for sponsorship partners. We've got an annual audience here in the millions, and if you want to go impressions, we're in the tens of millions. Reach out to Caroline.Smith at Southeastern14.com if you're interested, or you can message one of us on Twitter if you like. But anyway, we've got a big audience, always looking for partners because that's what pays the bills around here. All right, speaking of paying bills, a lot of kids from the SEC are going to be paying bills, and they're going to be doing it out of healthy bank accounts. Let's start at the top of the draft. And look, we've got a lot of things to go over. We're going to talk about current players, and we're going to talk about commitments and whether they go to SEC schools. Lots of schools are going to be nervous as the draft starts. But Graham, we've got a heavy SEC presence starting at the top, including, of course, the big question of every draft: who's number one? Feels to me like this is going to be a Charlie Condon or Travis Bazzana of Oregon State discussion. Hard to know. Sometimes a team will throw you a curveball. And was it Heston Kjerstad that was taken number one? Or I guess he was taken two maybe a few years back. Point is, sometimes a guy will move up several slots on the board based on wanting to save when a slotting discount. It's not like the NFL draft where it's the best guy goes one and so on and so forth. Right. Usually it's different, but is it a Condon Bazzana debate at the top now?
I think so. And just go back to somebody like Charlie Condon, who had him being in this spot. I mean, a walk on at Georgia, and he's just absolute turned into a monster. He's had 2 great years in a row. So he is shaping up to be Georgia's highest draft pick ever. And he's certainly going to be in the worst case for him, he'll be selected in the 2 spot. So what a story, what a player he is. Really, the only knock on him is his speed, not really an outstanding, base runner or anything like that. But when you hit doubles and home runs, does it really matter? So that's kind of what Charlie Condon has done. Great story, great teammate. He certainly has a bright future. I'm kind of curious to see what his home will be at the next level. Where will he find a position in the minor leagues and as he works his way up towards the big leagues?
Yeah, his position may be batter's box. I mean,
Right.
they'll find
Yeah.
somewhere from he's played right, he's played some first, he's played some third. I don't think he's I say that kiddingly. I don't think Charlie Condon's going to be drafted for his defense, but I don't know it's going to be a deterrent. And then it gets interesting, guys. We've got Braden Montgomery, looks like a consensus top 10 pick by the boards I'm looking at. The ankle injury, that ended his season, I don't think will be any sort of a deterrent. You've got Jac Caglianone, who's a two-way guy, but being looked at more as a hitter. And then you got Hagen Smith here. It probably a top 5 pick in a year where hitting just dominated. You got a lefty out there that just put up incredible numbers. Alfred, very, very interesting to see who goes off the board in the top 10. I mean, I say interesting. I'd be a little surprised if any of these guys fall out of the top 10.
Yeah, you kind of got just a jumble of players beyond Bazzana and Condon in the top 2, and it gets really, really interesting. Obviously, Caglianone's up there. I think J.J. Weatherholt out of West Virginia is probably going to be in the top 5 somewhere in between him and Montgomery. Then you go a little further back, Hagen Smith. His name is kind of rearing its ugly head, if you will. Not that Hagen Smith has an ugly head. It's just,
It was ugly when he tried to hit him.
Right. It was ugly in that sense, but he's going to be up there. He had incredible numbers. Again, the opposing batting average he had was like 140 something, which is incredible to put up. He's a guy who could kind of I think he could work his way through the minors very quickly, not necessarily like Paul Skeens did, but almost like you can see him in a year or two in the major leagues if a team really needs pitching. And then some other guys too, kind of teetering on the brink of top 10, Christian Moore back there at 12. Currently in the MLB's latest mock draft they did on July 4th. And then you have some high school guys in the mix too. Connor Griffin, obviously, we talked about him before we went on here. Very interesting high school prospect. Says here he plays multiple positions too on the infield and outfield. So he's just an all-around gadget MLB teams can take. So it's still a lot of SEC names from a little bit beyond the top 5 onward. And I think it's interesting. You can see a lot of guys ending up in different spots. And with Christian Moore, just based on what he was doing, he can end up in the top 10 as well.
Yeah, I've gone ahead and pulled up MLB Pipeline's ranking of top 250 players. You can see their board. Baseball America is a little different. I was going to look at ESPN's too, but they hadn't updated theirs since early May, and a lot of stuff can change there. So you can kind of follow along with us in terms of the top 10. Graham, do you ever remember such a heavy college dominance? I mean, Alfred sort of alluded to it, but you got J.J. Weatherholt of West Virginia in there. They got Chase Burns at Wake, formerly of Tennessee, Nick Kurtz in there. I mean, we've got, according to this, top 8 guys, all college guys.
I cannot. And for the longest time, it kind of seemed like scouts in Major League Baseball, the trend was we want high school signees, just young prospects. Take your time with them, and as they slowly work their way up through the system. Now the SEC is so good, and some of these other conferences are as well, but the SEC is the best. And Major League Baseball, they're not shy. They're not afraid of going this route now. They know that the facilities in the SEC are top-notch. The coaching is outstanding. So Major League Baseball, they're not afraid, it seems like, of signing an SEC player or collegiate player just because they play in the best facilities, top-notch training, athletic trainers, all that stuff. And we've already seen it with what Paul Skeens has done. Now that's the exception. That's not the norm. So it just seems like they're getting more comfortable of taking college prospects now.
And I'm really very interested to see how NIL affects this down the line, because now it used to be, all right, you can take a signing bonus of a couple $1 million, or you can take your chances that you can better your stock in 3 years, sometimes 2 years if you're a draft eligible sophomore. I don't know if this is maybe the start of that, but it feels like now you can sort of hedge your risk a little bit as a high school player if you've got a school that'll write you a six-figure check to come to school. It's probably not, they're probably not going to match what major league teams do right off the bat. But if it's like, hey, I can get that signing bonus, maybe this a little more or less and get some now and not have to do bus rides, a little bit about minor league bus rides.
Yeah.
I'm very interested in that dynamic here.
Well, yeah, you just touched on it. That's the main thing. What kind of lifestyle do you want for the next 3 years? Do you want to play in front of 10,000 people in an awesome stadium, fun environment, and fly to wherever you play? Or do you want to have an 8-hour bus ride and play in front of maybe 1,000, 2,000 people and nobody really cares? I mean, it just kind of depends on what you're looking for. Do you want the college experience, play against the best in college, or do you want to go be a pro right away? So I do think NIL, this has been a benefit where some of the top players in the country are staying in college, and in particular the SEC.
All right, the next tier of players, and again, we're going to do college players first, and then we'll circle back to high school kids. So we'll actually double back to some of these names on this list later. But the next tier, I would call the potential first rounders. You've got Christian Moore, Jurrangelo Cijintje. This is all just SEC-only players. Tommy White of LSU, Ryan Waldschmidt of Kentucky, pretty interesting. I may touch on him in just a minute. And Billy Amick and Dakota Jordan. Alfred, I have you start with Christian Moore and Billy Amick. Moore is a guy that was a borderline first-rounder probably 6 weeks ago. In fact, ESPN, I think, had him 40 on its board. But again, that's a little bit outdated. Interesting to see where Moore and Amick go. Amick's a guy that you saw replaced a little bit late in games for defense and maybe just a little bit of uneven hitting here and there. But Moore's a kid who just had good at bat after good at bat and hit a lot of home runs out in Omaha in the postseason, and a guy that may have helped his stock as much as anybody in terms of college guys lately, Alfred.
Yeah, with Moore, I think the questions about his bat have pretty much been answered. I remember the one home run, and you guys remember it too, he had against Florida State. It was like 117 off the bat with the exit velo, and it was out before you could blink your eye. Just a line drive out. And I think, and a lot of MLB scouts were drooling at that hit and just what he could do with his power and whatnot. And he hit for the cycle. He's doing all these great things in Omaha, and it's sort of skyrocketed him. I mean, I just said he's 13 right now in the pipeline, and the latest mock draft MLB pipeline he's 12th overall. So he's obviously skyrocketing up this list. And I think, his defense, the defense is a little wonky, and not that it's bad. I just don't really know if teams know where to put him. I would imagine it'd be somewhere in the infield, but I'm not going to guarantee that even. He could be out in the outfield. That's something definitely I think they're going to figure out once he gets to minor league play, where he's going to be and stuff. And with Billy Amick, that's really a question. I think it's the bat kind of fell off a little bit, but the bat, I think, is what puts him up high in the borderline first round area. But with Amick, it's defensively, like where do you put him? Because third base is one of those corner infield key positions in Major League Baseball that you really need to step up your game. You see that if you watch any MLB, that's the case. And the question is, do you trust him over on that side of the field and stuff? Amick's definitely more of a question of whether or not he's going to be in the first round compared to Moore. I could see Amick slipping a little bit outside of it. With that being said, though, I do think Billy Amick has been on MLB scouts' radar since even before this past season started, just based off what he did at Clemson and other things. The bats from these two guys are very, very rock solid. It's just the defense and where you're going to put him and whether or not you trust guys like Billy Amick to be stout enough to play defensively at the MLB level.
Graham, you are our resident of the Magnolia State here. Two Mississippi State guys you could see in the first round. Jurrangelo Cijintje, I would be really shocked if he fell out of the first round now. He was a guy that kind of played his way into it. Dakota Jordan may have kind of played his way out of it with late season performances in the SEC tournament and in the postseason. Did get going late, a little too late for Mississippi State, but those are two names I'm very interested to see where they go. Cijintje just was so dominating out of the gate. Now, after about 75 pitches, it fell off, but the fastball slider combination is just elite. And with Jordan, I think it's going to depend on how much stock teams put into what they saw or maybe didn't see late in his season.
Right. I'll touch on Jurrangelo first. First of all, I mean, his story is well known. How cool is it where you have somebody that can throw in the 90s, left-handed, right-handed? Uh, it's going to be interesting just see. He's a natural lefty, so will he be a left-handed pitcher? Will whoever drafts him, will they be comfortable with him throwing with both arms? Will he be a starter? Will he come out of the bullpen? Like, there's so many options with him. I think it's such a fascination to see the trajectory of his career and just whoever drafts him, how they want to handle and balance that. Dakota Jordan, interesting story. You touched on late struggles, like he was in a slump down the stretch. He did have the big walk-off home run in that regional in Charlottesville, the Virginia regional. So he had the walk-off home run there for Mississippi State. So he kind of finished on a positive note for Mississippi State. That's a guy, he played at a private school in Mississippi, Jackson Academy. He was a football and baseball player. He signed with Mississippi State to play both. That was when Mike Leach was the head coach. Smart decision by him just to give up football, focus on baseball, and he is trending into being a first-round draft pick. The thing with him, like, phenomenal athlete, built like a linebacker or a big running back, something like that. Where would his home be? Still a little bit raw, but has so much potential and upside that a team will not have any issues at all drafting him in the first round and just letting him try to figure it out. So still very young. I mean, he's barely 21, so he's got, a bright future ahead of him. So again, two-way player, football, baseball, gives up football pretty quickly when he arrived in Starkville, and what a decision by him because he's about to make a lot of money playing baseball.
Yeah, built like a football player.
Yeah.
One guy that I'm really intrigued with, Ryan Waldschmidt. This kid just flat out hit. He was such a tough out. Every time I watched Kentucky, I mean, it seemed like you thanked your lucky stars and said a prayer to God when you got him out. And he was not playing in one of those hitter-friendly environments. I mean, he was nowhere near the first round, I don't think. I don't know if he was even a top 100 or 200 kid. I think he was coming off an injury. So great story there. Very happy for Ryan Waldschmidt that he makes it into the top 100. And then Tommy White. I'll be honest, I don't know what to do with Tommy White because he didn't have, Graham, the dominating season that maybe he had. I mean, it came on
His
late.
first 2 years.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, he was such a disaster defensively a year ago. And then this year, I think made maybe 3 or 4 errors, made some nice plays over there. I think health was an explanation as to why maybe his defense got better, but it's going to be interesting to see what teams do with him.
I kind of think what his nickname is Tommy Tanks, right? He is built like a tank. I kind of think his home is going to be first base. Like, third base is so hard to play at the professional level. Hot corner for a reason. I mean, whoever drafts him might give him an opportunity here or there at third base, but I just kind of think his home is going to be first base. He's so good at the plate. Like, everybody knows what he can do offensively when he's in the box. You don't really have to worry about much there, but defensively, I kind of think he's going to be a first baseman moving forward at the next level.
All right, we've got 2 more tiers of players, and again, this is all current players. I think you've got potentially guys who could slip into the first round if an organization really likes a guy looking to save on a slot deal. I think those guys, they're all pitchers. You're looking at Drew Beam of Tennessee, Bryce Cunningham of Vanderbilt, who was really dominant at times, but very uneven. Luke Holman of LSU, one of the top 5 starting pitchers in the league this year. And then Ben Hess, who was always Alabama's most highly regarded arm, but just it seemed like the results never matched the stuff. I think you could see any one of those guys go in the first round to the right team. And then you've got a bunch of top 100 picks, maybe a dozen guys here. And I will move down the list so you can kind of see who we're looking at. We'll get past the Dakota Jordan, Billy Amick tier. Here's Hess and Holman. You see those guys at 44 and 45 here. And then probably the next tier of SEC players starts with Jared Thomas at Texas, Ryan Prager at A&M, Gage Jump of LSU. Cunningham ranked a little bit higher, I think, on Baseball America than he is here. Same with Beam. And then you get in, Tennessee. There's going to be a very heavy presence of Tennessee guys at this point in the draft. You got Blake Burke, you got Kavaris Tears, you got Dylan Dreiling a little further down. I think sometimes I like Dreiling better than either of those other guys. A lot to talk about here. Alfred, what stands out to you in this next tier of, I don't know, maybe 15, 16 SEC players?
Yeah, with Dylan, I'll start with Dylan Dreiling. Actually, it's you want to talk about a guy whose stock went up because of Omaha. It is most certainly him. I mean, he won Player of the Tournament for a reason. Just the clutch factors there. And I think Tennessee is becoming a power factory and an MLB factory with the guys they're able to pump out at the plate. Blake Burke is obviously a beneficiary of that as well, and it's guys as well as I skipped over Kavaris Tears, him too. All those guys, I think you look for them what to do with their bat. And I really think all of them, it's an experiment with where they'll play on defense. I think Blake Burke's home at first base is pretty rock solid. If an MLB team feels he could stay there, keep him there. As Graham said with Tommy White, I think it's the safe bet, just to work with and stuff, as opposed to, let's say, third base in that hot corner. And Kavaris Tears showed off, he flashed the glove defensively a little bit too in the outfield throughout the tournament as well. So defensively, there's good things there. I just think the power these guys shows is very indicative of what they can do at the major league level. If you look at all of them, I don't know if it's going to be fast tracked. In fact, I'm willing to bet it's not going to be fast tracked with these guys at this point getting to the major league level, but it's certainly guys who could thrive in the minors for a good amount of time and, work their way toward that, getting to that point. Tennessee's already had a ton of guys get to that point already. Drew Gilbert's doing great in the Mets system. He's high up as one of their top prospects after getting traded there and still working in the minor league level. We've seen Jordan Beck and Trey Lipscomb get called up this year at this point in the majors as well. And you'll definitely see these guys' names, and they're probably not going to be in the first round, but it's power bats you can snag late, and that's just what Tennessee's been doing ever since Tony Vitello got there. Also with, I guess I'll touch on Drew Beam too, since he's up here. I like his pitching arsenal is great. I think he throws a variety of different things at batters, and his fastball is very, very, very high velocity, high 90s usually most of the time as well. I think there's fine tuning on, what he can do once he gets to that fourth and fifth inning point. We saw this year he would get to that point and would sometimes give up runs and whatnot and catch some trouble. But man, the first, second, and third inning for him were just lights out the entire time. It seemed he started, especially this season, and he's just been, he's a workhorse. He throws a variety of different things at you, and I think he's a very attractive pitching prospect for guys later on if they want to get someone like him.
I pulled Blake Burke up here, his little profile. Oh, by the way, you can get these all for free at MLB Pipeline. So I recommend if you're watching the draft, and especially if you don't want to pay a premium subscription, this is good info. And I think they're probably getting it from the MLB Scouting Bureau. I have had some questions about whether Burke's profile has been updated, because if you watch him, there are people that swear by his defense. And he did make some good plays. One thing I've noticed, he's pretty good at, he's not afraid if he gets they got a guy on first and he's got a play to be made at second, he trusts his arm to make that play. He's not going to run well at all, I think, as everybody knows. The arm gets rated a 40, which is fringy. The field tool is rated a 40. Again, when I watched him at times, it played better than that. So I don't know if the scouts just haven't updated this or they're seeing something in that profile that's problematic. But that's always been an interesting one to me, because it feels like people are very divided on the defense part. And of course, when you're first baseman, all those guys hit for power. So you better be ready to do that too. Tears is a guy that's interesting to me. We mentioned this during Omaha when they had the injury to Inslee in center, felt like they could move him to center and maybe he could do okay, which he did very well. Made some plays in center. I remember a diving catch particularly he made. Arm is great. In fact, you look at the grades here, and it really seems to me to add up higher than 66. I don't know if, again, something wasn't updated. So those guys are interesting. And Beam, you talked about. Beam was a guy who just was I don't know that pitch to contact guy is entirely fair, but maybe soft contact guy. But then he brought it up a notch with the breaking ball and the fastball. Seemed like they ticked up in Omaha and really looked like a guy who could dominate for certain spurts. So those will be interesting guys. Graham, let's go back to you. Of this other tier of players, we got Cole Messina in here, Chris Cortez, Gage Miller, Cal Steven, Colby Shelton, Peyton Stovall, all guys that could see their name called in the top 100. Carter Holton at Vandy, if he could ever stay healthy. The stuff was pretty dominant when it played up. Who have you got an eye on in this tier of players, and why?
I'll say somebody that I don't think we've touched on yet. We talked about him a lot in Omaha. That's Chris Cortez of Texas A&M.
Yeah.
He is 85 on this list that we're looking at here. And as we touched on when he was in Omaha, electric stuff. I mean, he's consistently high 90s, 100 miles an hour. The thing with him is just control and walks. He still walks way too many batters. But if you have the stuff that he has, teams are definitely going to take a chance on you, which is why he will be towards, first round, supplemental first round, maybe second round. He will be drafted highly. And once he gets in a system where the pitching coach and pitching coordinator will have to plenty of time to sit down and work with him, like his future will be phenomenal. I kind of see him coming out of the bullpen, not so much being a starter at the next level, but somebody that has all the potential in the world for sure.
Yeah. Cortez, to me, you don't usually draft guys as future closers, but he profiles to me as a guy that could end up in that role. I think it's just going to be a matter of when he gets into the minors, how quickly does he get control of his stuff? Because you would see it abandon him. That's why he would run at a high pitch count. So look, in the major league level, he's probably going to be counted on to throw 20 to 30 pitches in short bursts. But like you saw that outing where he threw 8 balls and they took him out. I think that was in one of A&M's games in Omaha. So he's kind of a wild card.
Yeah. Not like, do you remember when Georgia had Beckham and Fields? He's not like Fields. Fields was a high draft pick as well, but Fields was good for 3 outs. Like that's all you're getting. I think Cortez, as you said, he can stretch it out a little bit more and can go 20 to 30, 35 pitches for you at the next level.
Yeah, I could see him doing that. Just when you're 101 with the fastball, a lot of times some teams want that max effort. So he's going to be picked in that range for sure. Be interesting to see the path. Other guys of interest, I really like Gage Jump. Thought he was such a rock for LSU. He's in this tier of players. Ryan Prager had such a great season at A&M, did fade a little bit late, came back from arm injury. Remember, he had not pitched since 2022, did well. Cole Messina, who just lit it up in the postseason. So you got a power hitting catcher there. Gage Miller, the JUCO transfer, who hit so well for Alabama. He's kind of made his way into the top 100. Cal Steven's another guy I like. I could see Steven being a back of the rotation guy who pitched for a while. He can throw strikes. Peyton Stovall kind of snuck on here. I think you would have said a couple of years ago when he came out of Arkansas, you would have thought he'd have been a first rounder now. Kind of a disappointing career, but scouts hadn't forgotten him. And Colby Shelton at Florida, of course, who made a jump from Alabama to Florida and then moved over from third to short. A move that surprised everybody, but handled it pretty well. Didn't have quite the season he wanted, but he's a guy that could see himself called in the top 100. All right, let's go back to the top here and talk about high school kids. And I think there's 2 teams that we're really watching in the draft. I think one's LSU at the top. Again, not a lot of high school names as top 10 type picks. But LSU's got 3 names that you could see get picked in the first round. Connor Griffin, I know a guy that you have seen play or know a little bit about. Graham. Cam Caminiti, yes, that is Ken Caminiti's son, and William Schmidt, all guys who got first round grades. So LSU will be watching the first round very closely, Graham.
Yeah, so the story for Connor Griffin, he's not originally from Mississippi. So he and his family, they moved to the Jackson area when he was in the 8th grade. So he plays at Jackson Prep, which is one of the top baseball programs in the state. It's a private school. They have won 7 straight state titles. He was a 2-way player, pitched a little bit. He projects he's going to be a position player and hit at the next level. So if you're wondering why LSU and not Ole Miss or Mississippi State, so like they're not originally from Mississippi, so like they didn't have ties to Mississippi State or Ole Miss. So, and obviously LSU is a great program. So everybody in the state, like if you're good in any of the big three sports in the state of Mississippi, you know, it's only a population of 3 million. People are going to hear about you quickly. That was kind of the story for Griffin. And so Ole Miss and State kind of realized, okay, this is somebody that more than likely is not going to sign and play in the SEC. So he signs with LSU. They would gladly take him, you know, they would, but I think everybody would be surprised if he ends up in Baton Rouge. But phenomenal talent. Grew up around the game of baseball, and the thing with him, just position once he finds a home defensively, you know, somebody that has a bright future for sure.
All right, speaking of the Magnolia State, Slade Caldwell's on campus at Ole Miss, but I think you'd be shocked if he makes it through the draft.
Yeah, same thing. He's from Jonesboro, Arkansas, which is not far from Oxford as well. It's only 2 hours away. In Oxford, moved in the dorms, all that stuff, just kind of doing what he needs to do. Similar situation if you're an Ole Miss fan to what Jackson Jobe did. Jackson Jobe, an Ole Miss signee, moved to Oxford, was on campus, all that stuff. Jobe was the number 3 pick in the draft by Detroit. That was back in 2021. So similar situation for Caldwell. Again, Ole Miss would gladly take him. They need him badly, but the Rebels would be kind of surprised if he does make it and end up playing at Ole Miss next season.
All right, a couple of other SEC commits to watch for in the first round. Middle infielder Theo Gillen of Texas, shortstop Kellen Lindsey of Florida, or a Florida commit that should mean. It should read. Kevin O'Sullivan's used to seeing guys taken in the first round, so that's one to watch. And from there, these guys don't have a very heavy first round presence, but Tennessee, my goodness, Alfred, there's about 6 or 7 Vols that you could see their names called in the top 10 rounds. I mean, maybe more than that, depending again on slotting deals and things like that. But Tony Vitello has assembled what I think Perfect Game considered the number 1 recruiting class. And now, boy, this roster construction for Tennessee, fascinating between what the Vols are doing in the portal. We'll get to that in a couple of minutes and what they get through the draft, Alfred.
Yeah, and I think, you know, Tony Vitello, I don't know if he's necessarily used to this many high school kids going to the draft if you were to ask him really at the start of when he got to Tennessee, but it's something he's going to have to face this year because you would have to imagine some of these kids will get picked somewhere. But, I mean, you look at the names down this list here of what Tennessee has. It's a lot of really great ones. I'm on 2025, excuse me. Here we go. Okay, so we got Anson Seibert from just committed to Tennessee out of Kansas. Really interesting right-hand prospect. Levi Clark as well out of Marietta, Georgia. I think that's a pipeline that Tennessee starts to – you'll see in the Georgia area, those kids kind of spread out to South Carolina and Tennessee often. That's a pipeline he's going to attack often as well. And a lot of these kids I think are going to end up getting picked. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays off. I think what Vitello does in the portal has been very important. He made some moves already. We'll get into that in a sec too with who he picked up, but it's a problem I don't know he's faced yet, and it's something he's going to have to kind of evaluate with after this draft is over and see who's actually coming to play, you know, in Knoxville for him. But it's a good problem to have. I think you can ask Kevin O'Sullivan, who has a lot of experience with this at this point in his career. It's a very good problem to have because you just have a bucket full of talent you could just kind of pick and choose from. And even if, you know, one of the things in the bucket gets out and walks away, you still have more to choose from there. So he's in the catbird seat with this stuff. And it's a lot of names that are very interesting and MLB scouts are already looking at. So we'll have to see, but very interested to see what he does there. Lucas Ramirez, I'll touch on a few more guys he has in the recruiting class, is a very, very talented bat out of American Heritage in Weston, Florida that he has. Brennan Seelger out of Farragut. That was where Cal Stark was from. Same thing. You know, he's attacking. Farragut's a very good baseball school in Knoxville. I think they've won the state title many, many times. So he's going to use that high school a lot, especially with it being right in Knoxville. That helps a lot for him in his recruiting process. It's a lot of guys who can have their names called, and you just keep going down this list. It's a lot of these guys are committed to Tennessee, and Tony Vitello is like I said, he's certainly in the catbird seat when it comes to this stuff, and we'll see how he handles it. That'll be another story to watch during this draft.
All right, let's wrap up draft thoughts before we hit the portal. Graham, any topics or players that we didn't touch on that are worth a mention on our way out of the draft segment here?
I mean, to me, just the story is how college heavy the draft is now, and just how good the SEC is. Just, I mean, look at how many players that we've talked about in the top 100 from the SEC. And Tennessee has 5 players in the top 80, which is, it's kind of easy to see why they won the national championship. So just talent all over the place. And I don't expect this to slow down anytime soon in the SEC.
Alfred, your parting thoughts on the draft?
Yeah, for those of you watching and for us three, we have a lot to look at. It's just, beyond even, I don't know if we've said that yet, but we have a lot to look at. And it's a lot of guys from the SEC, a lot of commits too in high school from the SEC. Those guys, high school baseball and that recruiting process isn't highlighted necessarily enough by the media and stuff. A lot of those guys may get picked as well. Another thing to watch out for, but I think it just, this trend the MLB took and the scouts took of college players, a lot of it is contributed to the SEC and the talent that gets pumped out from there. And you and Chris and Graham were alluding to that, and I'll hop on it here. It's interesting to see how it goes because they just know that these 16 schools now just have a ton of players that, are ready to play at the next level that don't even need to play at these schools. So it's a lot of names are going to be called, a lot to watch out for, and it's going to be exciting. It's going to be a really cool draft because I haven't been in college baseball as long as you guys have, but I haven't seen, a lot of SEC guys at the top like this in quite some time.
Yeah, I think what I'm watching for as we wrap it up here, among things we haven't touched on, first of all, I forgot to mention this, Derek Curiel, outfielder, LSU commit, took his name out of the draft. So you see him on MLB Pipeline. I think he is around, I want to say 117th. Yeah, here he is. He is not going to be drafted. He is told teams don't draft him, taking his name out. So that's one that LSU gets as a bonus. Not a lot of guys in that range take their name out of the draft and in terms of seeing what could be and just go pro, but he's one. So that's one that when you say, hey, why was this kid not picked? Well, he's telling teams don't pick me. So there's that. I think the other thing is what I call the Judd Fabian scenario. The kid who was, I think, a first-round pick by, what was it, the Dodgers a couple years ago, or were the Dodgers the team that took him and signed him? I don't remember, Graham, but a guy that's a first-rounder, maybe borderline first-rounder, that doesn't like the money he's offered and comes back. I mean, I'm thinking Thatcher Hurd is kind of interesting because I think he's technically in the portal, but could come back to LSU, or he's going to get drafted. Thatcher Hurd, it never really panned out for him the way that people thought it would. And again, pros are more about upside than what you've done, but Hurd's never really put it together. That's kind of an intriguing name to me. Does he get picked? If you want to go that route, LSU guys that have hit the transfer portal, all this one left from Auburn to come to LSU. Chris Stanfield didn't really have a great year this last year, but potentially a top 150 pick, maybe. Talented kid, athletic kid. I don't think the production has matched where he's rated, but he's a kid that found the portal, got some leverage, but also get drafted. So, yeah, I mean, guys like that always are ones to watch for, Graham. Somebody that sort of throws everybody for a loop and says, hey, I didn't like where I got picked or the money I got offered, and I'm coming back to college. Feels like we get maybe one or two of those every year in the SEC.
Right. And you mentioned Thatcher Hurd. That's fascinating to me to watch to see what he does because he has something that's important, and that's leverage. I mean, he can tell these major league teams, well, this is my number. If you don't meet it, I'm going to go somewhere in college, and he's going to get paid one way or the other. So it's fascinating to see, will he sign and go pro, or will he be somewhere in the SEC, as you said? So That'll be one to watch for sure. Right now, 64 Analytics, he's top 3 of an unsigned, uncommitted player right now. So that will be a fun one to watch for sure.
All right, let's talk transfer portal. Our man Alfred's been our guy doing our research on most of this. We did talk about it in our debut episode last week. So if there's a major player that's been in the portal for a few weeks that we've not hit on, good chance we talked about him last week. But Alfred, what has popped out to you as newsworthy within the last week in terms of portal developments?
Yeah, well, like I said at the beginning, make sure everyone watching, go look for yourself at the moves that have been made. Because like I said, we could do a 2.5 hour video on just moves that have been made, as a whole. But I'll go over the main, like Chris said, I'll go over the main ones I saw. Tennessee made 2 transfer additions that I thought were very interesting. The first one is Tanner Franklin, a pitcher out of Kennesaw State. He provided some interesting numbers in 2024. 5.6 ERA, 27 1/3 innings of work. It seems like he's a reliever just because he made 1 start all season, but the strikeouts were very good. 43 strikeouts over that 27 1/3 stretch. I think Tennessee's just looking to get some more knockout power out of their bullpen, and Franklin can provide that. The other one that's interesting, a lot of people have been deeming this the Christian Moore replacement, and I think that's fair to say. It's Gavin Klein out of Louisville. He hit for the cycle this season. I saw that. I can't remember at what point he did it, but he definitely did at some point. And the numbers are great for him. 340 batting, slugging at 621. The on base needs a little bit of work. I think he's a guy. I think he just likes to swing the bat, and he's an aggressive bat. But he's a very, very, very interesting prospect to look at. His pure hitting numbers are very good. I'm sure Tennessee will have a lot of fun working with him and whatnot. Gavin Cash was a big name out of Texas Tech in the portal. Probably before he committed, he was, I would imagine, top 3 unsigned, but he went to A&M. He is a draft risk. I can't remember if we saw his name on the pipeline somewhere. It's somewhere up there. That's something to watch out for A&M. Lavalette returned, as well as Lampkin and Sorrell. So Michael Early retaining some of A&M's big players from last year, which is key. I think a lot of these A&M guys are sort of, eyeing a revenge year, if they will, for a national title maybe. And that's why they're coming back there. And obviously, if you get Lavalette, Lampkin, and Sorrell back, that's 3 big keys to what you did a year ago. So that's good stuff for A&M to do. And then I think the other interesting thing, before I let someone else go and talk a little bit, South Carolina got Nolan Naraki out of Clemson. He was a pretty big bat in their lineup throughout this season. And any questions we had about Paul Maneri and what he'd do in the portal, he's sort of answering, I think, guys. I mean, I think, you can contribute a lot of that to Monty Lee and the rest of his staff in Columbia with what he's doing. But, yeah, it's really cool to see that he's kind of come back into baseball post NIL portal stuff where you didn't know how he was going to do with it. And he's made South Carolina an attractive destination for people that are transferring around him and the talent that's around him, in particular Clemson. I mean, he's kind of pillaging Clemson right now, some of their players and stuff. So very cool to see out of there. So Maneri kind of just adding to the South Carolina lineup that's losing some guys. And, he's doing, I would like to say he's doing very well. So if you're a South Carolina fan watching, your new ball coach, no matter his age, he is all for this portal stuff and he's thriving in it.
Yeah, Gavin Kylan was a huge portal ad for Tony Vitello in Tennessee. The number 4 player, according to 64 Analytics, I think the number 2 hitter. Graham, a lot of news at A&M with guys coming back. Ole Miss is a team that's been featured prominently in portal news, usually not good news. Of the stuff that Alfred didn't touch on, what stands out to you here?
I'll touch on Ole Miss since you brought it up. So Ole Miss has lost a lot of key players. This week, though, they did sign a couple new additions. They did get transfer from Illinois, second team all-conference selection. He's an outfielder. I think Ole Miss is trying to figure out if he's going to be left field or right field, but that was a good get. Ole Miss was down to 1 catcher on the roster. It's kind of hard to get through a season with only 1 catcher, and he was a true freshman. That was Smithwick, and Ole Miss doesn't even know if catcher is going to be his full-time position moving forward. So what did they do? They addressed that need. They got a catcher from BYU. A lot of people forget BYU's in the Big 12 now.
Yeah.
Like I forgot that.
I
So
forget it.
his numbers were way better in conference play than they were non-conference wise. What's the connection? Well, he's from Magnolia Heights High School, which is 30 minutes from Oxford. His uncle's the head coach at BYU, which is why he went there coming out of high school. So that was a must get. Ole Miss needed depth at catcher. Got that. They just got a shortstop as well. So it seemed like everybody was leaving Ole Miss, and now Ole Miss has money space now with all the departures. So they got money and they're trying to put it to good use and just trying to put together a roster. Other things that step out to me when you look at some of these numbers, like it surprises me, Georgia, who has the number 1 ranked transfer portal class, by the way, they've signed 15 transfer portal players. That's a lot. And they lost 15 players from last season's team as well. And this is a team that made the super regionals. So 15 transfer portals, that's a lot. You want to make sure at least half of those hit. So that'll be one to watch. And then the other thing that stands out to me is LSU lost 17 players from last year's team. 17. And that's a team that was kind of got off to a very slow start, and then they just kind of got hot late. So LSU is always going to be in the mix, it feels like. So how many of those players for LSU will hit their transfer portal additions moving forward?
Yeah, Cam Johnson is one of the guys that they lost. Where did he wind up? I've drawn a blank on that. Or has he landed yet, Alfred?
Oklahoma. He's at Oklahoma now. That's
okay.
We did that briefly last episode, but I guess I'll touch on it a little more. That's, I think, Oklahoma's biggest signing so far, and we saw flashes of what it was. I mean, his fastball is ridiculous if he gets it going.
Yeah.
So, good addition for Oklahoma to start in SEC play. And then I guess touching on LSU some more. I kind of skipped over this, but another portal addition I guess they got was Jac Caglianone, who we saw in the tournament at Wofford. Chris, you really liked him a lot. He was Wofford's best pitcher, and I think probably one of the best pitchers any mid-major school had to offer, period, at least that we saw in the tournament. His stuff was really, really good. He's a guy that could go deep into games. 3.35 ERA and 17 starts. You like to see that. 110 innings this year, 124 strikeouts. So he's just a guy that could take you the distance. And with LSU, I think, based off what you saw last year, you would like to have a guy that could do that, a lot more than what you had last year with guys like Thatcher Hurd and others, not necessarily panning out like you wanted to, but a good addition there. And then the other one, just one more big LSU signing, Chris Stanfield out of Auburn is heading there as well. Stanfield was, I believe, was he an outfielder? Yes, he was an outfielder this past year. Center fielder. Yeah, okay. So you look at what he did.
Not a great center fielder, by the way. I think he's needs some work. But anyway.
Oh, yeah. 276 batting average, 4 home runs, not necessarily a power guy, but it's an interesting kind of a development story maybe they can do. Kind of reminds sort of like, it's just a development type of thing, like kind of what Michael Braswell was for them this past year coming out of South Carolina. He popped off a little bit in Hoover and stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of pans out and develops there. But the other move too, I guess, I've touched on Florida a bunch. It seems like since I've joined this show, I'll do them one more favor. I guess they did some recruiting while Stetson came and beat them in the midweeks because they landed a Stetson kid, Kyle Jones, 355 batting average, 32 RBIs. He's a really good bat they have. So that's another addition they have that's big for them. And all that sort of good stuff. And then touching on Missouri, too, I guess we haven't really looked at Missouri yet and their portal stuff. Logan Lunsford, who was one of their big bats, he's out currently in the portal, exploring other options. I think he can come back to Missouri, but you'd have to imagine if a big NIL school can offer him, and I'm sure some will. Logan Lunsford is a good enough bat to get that kind of money. He'll go elsewhere. But Missouri also landed Caden Nicoletto from Columbia College. He's a JUCO kid. Batting average and on base percentage up near 400 in the 500 level. So he's a kid who's just putting up ridiculous stuff in JUCO games, and he's going to be interesting to watch at Missouri and stuff. Maybe that's his big shot, getting SEC ball action. So Caden Nicoletto is a big name to watch out for Missouri. But like I said, just a bunch of portal moves have been made, and there's some interesting spots some people have landed. I really like the biggest one, I think, out of all these, now that I said it, is Jac Caglianone at LSU. I really like that they did that. I think it's kind of a hidden gem, a diamond in the rough they found. So very good pitching prospect they found out of the upstate for LSU.
Yeah, Missouri is routinely gotten rated in the transfer portal. Lunsford's a guy that pitched some big innings for them. I think he will find a home at a big school somewhere, or go back to Missouri. So that's a good catch by you there, Alfred, because he was. We don't spend a lot of time talking about Missouri, but he was a guy that's an impressive talent. A&M. Lampkin, Sorrell, both have gone back. Again, Kendall Rogers had said that, hey, with this hire that A&M has made, you'll see a lot of these guys go back out of the portal and back to A&M. A lot of that has happened so far. Some other things of note: two-way USC Upstate transfer Noah Sullivan, now at Mississippi State. Don't know a lot about that one. Thomas Burns from Arizona State at Texas. And then a kid who jumped in at the last minute, Cam Koziel, middle infielder / DH for Vanderbilt, who I think would have maybe started for them next year potentially. Played a lot last year until he got hurt, started a good bit, but he's jumped in the portal. He's from Nebraska, so don't know if he'll end up back in state or somewhere else, but that's one to watch. All right, college baseball tournaments. We were going to touch on those a little bit last week, but had too much other stuff to talk about. Alfred, we got a couple of big fields announced out in Texas, one in Houston. And then we've got the college baseball showdown at Globe Life Field, home of the Texas Rangers. Don't have all the February pairings yet. I don't think they've announced the Arizona tournament that we usually see. But Alfred, what's standing out to you about what we're going to see in Globe Life and in I want to call it Minute Maid, but Houston Astros College Classic? We got a very heavy SEC presence in those two tournaments.
Yes, we do. And going back, I call it Lunsford a bat. That's my bad. He is a pitcher. I slipped up on that one. But just looking ahead at Houston and stuff like that, the field's great. I mean, A&M, Arizona, Tennessee, Oklahoma State, Mississippi State, and Rice. We have 3 SEC schools in there, 3 really big SEC schools. That's going to pull crowds there. I mean, I'd imagine people from Starkville and College Station will make a short trip to Houston to watch some baseball, and Tennessee fans just seem to go anywhere. So that'll be a good crowd for those schools to be at, and a lot of intriguing matchups as well. Interested to see, the more I've done research, Rice has just always been a big baseball school. Interested to see what kind of team and what kind of challenge they'll bring. We saw a little bit of Oklahoma State. I know Carson Benj is going to be high in the draft. They're going to lose him, but Oklahoma State's definitely a school that can retain with NIL money and get some players. So they'll be a good challenge as well. And then Arizona, I mean, they were a team that hosted in the tournament this past season. So it's a very, very big field, very interesting field we got. And usually these classics at the beginning of the year, they just provide, it's kind of like, it reminds me of college basketball when they do the classic Duke, Michigan State, Kansas, Kentucky tournament in New York to start the year. It's sort of like that. And you get the best of the best going up against each other and like heavyweight fights to start. And they did well, at least with this Houston one. They did really well picking out this field, and that's February 28th through March 2nd of 2025. So keep your eye out for that. Obviously, we'll dig deeper into it when we know what rosters are and stuff, and when we get closer to the season and stuff. But just, at face value, the teams we got here are incredible. They did well, with getting crowds and making money, and then obviously just the pure talent you got coming to the Astros ballpark is going to be immense.
Graham, any thoughts on the two fields in Texas? And have I missed any of the I feel like I missed something somewhere, but the Google search is not turning up much for me in terms of other February tournaments for next year.
Yeah, those are the big ones for sure. And both of those ballparks do a great job in Houston and Dallas. I get a kick out of what it reminds me of. These games are on Flow Sports. And it's so funny because you have to sign up for it and then you forget about it. And then months go by.
And then they charge you later when you cancel.
So that's the frustrating part. I do think D1 Baseball started streaming one of these tournaments too. So they put it on their website, which I know baseball fans across the country were like, yes, emoji hands, thank you. So that I get a kick out of those tournaments being on Flow Sports, because you never think or hear about Flow Sports until these tournaments in February.
I've heard some Flow Sports broadcasts where I think they literally just got dudes off the street at the last minute. I mean, you think I'm kidding, but I'm not.
They should let us three do a game.
They may or may not have known baseball. Yeah, hey, we could easily top the effort at Flow Sports, but
right. No, throw you two up top and then throw me in a dugout and let us have some fun.
Well, yeah,
right. Alfred could be our sideline reporter.
But I'm excited. And, I didn't even talk about, I guess I could just do it real quick, the Globe Life field, too. It's a ton of different teams. You have Auburn going, Texas, Arkansas, Ole Miss is going as well. It's just a ton of different teams to look at, too. Oregon State, great baseball school going down there. It's exciting. Hopefully, the Flow Sports situation, hopefully we'll all get past. But it's going to be some great baseball to start the season.
It will, and I'm curious what is Oregon State going to look like? This will be their first season where they don't have a home. So how good will they be? And then this will probably be the best competition they play all season.
Yeah, the Pac-2.
Kind of.
What a mess. All right, I won't get started on that today. Gentlemen, it's been a fun show today. About the next show we'll have more draft stuff to talk. Let's see. We're this one will air Wednesday, and I guess by the next show we'll have the draft in the books. I'm getting a little confused with my vacation schedule coming up. But we'll have that to talk about. We'll have more guys settled in the portal. We'll have God knows what. I mean, off season we'll be doing these once a week. We'll probably maybe have some coaches, some broadcasters, some other media people. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I know we are committed to bring you a great SEC baseball experience every week. So thank you to those who have listened. If you have not subscribed, be sure to do that. Give the podcast a thumbs up. That helps us with the analytics, helps us get paid, all those things. And don't know where this is going next, but I assure you we will be here with our episodes throughout the off season with something, because there's always something to talk about in the SEC, and we're here looking for it. All right, for Alfred Ezman and Graham Doty, I'm Chris Lee. We are Southeastern 16, presented by Bet Online.